Hello, book club. I am so excited for our interview today with Valerie Taylor. She wrote What's Not Said. And your member votes voted her in as our second ever book club book of the month for May. So we'll be reading along. And this is our first interview, so we'll get to ask the before questions, what we're wondering about before we open this up. So I have a ton of questions, and I'm honored and excited to have Valerie here. Gemma loves to ask a question every interview, and she has, I think, a really great question for you. Gemma, would you like to come ask your question in regards to your cover? So I'm going to hold up your book.
Oh, okay. Hi, Gemma.
You want to say hi?
Hi.
Do those keys on the front open a magical door?
Oh, that would be really, really clever, like Narnia. Have you seen Narnia, right?
Yes.
Not a door, but a metal box.
Ooh.
Actually, two metal boxes.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
Intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah. They're called lock boxes. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, because locks and they you have to open them.
Yeah. What do you think people put in boxes that they lock up?
Don't know.
You don't know? What would you put in a box and lock it up? Do you have some precious jewelry or a little?
I have some like really, really precious jewels in one of my rock collections.
Yes, your rock collection.
A rock collection is very important. Very important. Those can turn into gems too. So.
Yeah. And they do have some gems.
Yeah. Great.
Oh, that was great. Say
thank you for that question. That was a great question.
Thank you, Valerie.
And
thank you, Gemma.
Do you have a copy of What's Not Said next to you too? You can hold it up. You can tell us
I do.
The description.
Sure. Well, I'll just, everybody can read what's on the back, so I don't want to do that. And you, Heather, have done such a wonderful job promoting the book. But before I begin, and I will certainly get to that, I wanted to thank you for this wonderful book club that you have launched just in the past couple of months, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. And I think I read on your site the other day that you had some good news, right? About a short story contest you won called In the Wind.
Yes.
So is that going to be published somewhere and that we can read, or how's that going to work?
All your kind words and to bring that up. Thank you so much. Yeah, actually, it's going to be in one of our local newspapers, which actually comes out today. So later on today, I'm going to venture out and see what it looks like. It felt pretty cool. They actually had me go in for an interview. They're going to publish the actual short story, and it was pretty exciting.
I can't wait to read it.
Thank you so much.
So back to What's Not Said. Let's see. It is set in Boston, and it is about a woman named Cassie who has stayed in her marriage long past its expiration date. Okay, she's been married to the same man for 30 plus years, and it's an emotionally abusive relationship. And she has tried to move out of the relationship several times, not very successfully. And she's finally made a decision. She's going to do it. And she had met a younger man, not a young man, but a younger man when she had ventured on a solo trip to Venice 5 years before. And her intent is to leave her husband and move in with this young man. Just as she's about to do that, she discovers that her husband has a life-threatening illness. And she is really conflicted because she really believes, somewhat, of course, in her vows of in sickness and in health. So she decides, or she does, the book is about how she decides, but her dilemma is that she has to decide whether to save herself or her husband. And that's part one, really, what's not said, because there's more in the sequel. So, yay.
Right. And now that launches in August.
August.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I'll just show that quickly because we'll talk more about it later in the month, but just to tie them together, this is the advanced reader's copy, kind of the same, you know, there's an image on the front of rings. So the first one is pink background. This one is a baby blue.
I love your covers. I love the way
thank
they look.
you. Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
I love
anyway.
even with this, like it's got this light pink, which is so like fragile and kind of feminine, but then it's got like the bold red that it makes it feel like this mix of confidence but soft, and it's got, you know, it kind of Valentine-y, which I thought was fun in an ironic kind of way, because like your story starts off, they're not in a Valentine mode. They're definitely in a different
they're
mode.
not in a Valentine mode.
I love it. And then you got the intrigue with the keys. I think it's beautiful. I see your cover designs are made by Mimi Bark.
Yes.
You have a lot of input into what you wanted that to look like?
Yes, as a matter of fact, my publisher is She Writes Press, and that and She Writes Press is a hybrid publisher, which means I have a lot of input. And actually, the name of the book was something different, and we won't have to go into that, but we changed the name to What's Not Said, which really fits it probably better. And then I wanted, I'll say it this way, I'll try to be very diplomatic. I did not want a person on my book, okay? So a lot of novels these days have, you know, women, sisters, children, you know. So I wanted it really more symbolic, okay, kind of in the way Emily Giffen has her covers. You know, there's like just a small image of something. That was kind of the image I had in my mind. And so for What's Not Said, the keys, as your daughter very rightfully picked out, play a major role in the story. And so that's where the keys came from. So
I love that. It came out great. It really sends this great message. And if I saw that on the shelf walking in the bookstore, I'd have to walk over like, oh, what is that? What's going on here? All right. And then, so I wanted to ask a little bit more about your writing journey. So I read on your website you joined Optima Group. Did I say that right? Optima and
Optima. A long time ago. Yeah.
Okay. And that it's where kind of your experience with writing kind of started. Do you want to talk about kind of what led you to where you are now?
Sure. Well, that's really interesting that I hadn't thought about Optima in a long time, but I had been a secretary and an admin by training, and along the way I joined Optima, which is a marketing and communications firm. And so I had the opportunity to transition. I had my bachelor's degree and going for my master's at the time. And so I was able to move in. I was a financial analyst, and then I got involved with doing a lot of the writing, and then I became an account exec and yada, yada. But I was writing for the rest of my career, all the different places I moved to. It was all mostly financial services, communications that I can't believe I did that for like 30 years. But it's all kind of fictionally nonfiction. Okay. And so I tried to bring some creative elements into it, but when you're writing for a bank or an investment company or a mutual fund, there's a lot of legal requirements and compliance rules that, I was constrained by. But it's funny that you ask, where it all started, because just recently I'm kind of looking, and this may be one of your questions down the road, I'm kind of looking forward to what I might be doing in the future. And so I've started watching an online course about mystery and thrillers. Because I think I'd like to write a cozy mystery. And I shouldn't have been, but I was a little surprised because right at the beginning of the course, the instructor talks about three authors that kind of laid the foundation for mysteries and thrillers. And, they're, obvious. They're Edgar Allan Poe, Sir Conan Doyle, and Agatha Christie, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was like, I almost jumped out of my seat, because as a child growing up, I mean, that's what I read. And so it became odd to me when I think about it, that that's not what I ended up writing. Okay. I ended up writing, women's fiction or chick lit, contemporary romance, any of those categories my books would fit in. So when you say, how did my journey really started way back with, Edgar Allan Poe, and then, eventually Stephen King, right? But then, so then I worked for all those years, and I retired in 2016, and I had started writing a novel. I had the idea for the ending of this book. And I lived in Seattle for 10 years, 2006 to 2016. And periodically over those 10 years, I would sit down and kind of noodle some chapters and everything. But I went back and read them after I retired, and they were not very good at all. I was not happy. Still had the ending in my mind. So I took an online novel blueprint course, and was able to, because it was self-paced and modular, I was able to choose the different modules that I knew where my weaknesses were. I know grammar, but I didn't really know how to construct a novel. And I was blown away and disappointed at the same time that there is, depending on your genre and everything, there is a formula for how books are written. And it really kind of took the bloom off the rose, because, when I think about my favorite book, Jane Eyre, written by Charlotte Bronte, almost 200 years ago, she didn't know there was a formula, so it's like, why do I have to stick to a formula?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I learned a lot. And so I made a decision, I think in 2017, that I was either going to write the book or learn how to knit. So
I love those two choices next to each other.
Because I have a black thumb, so I can't garden. And so I wrote the book.
I'm glad you did.
Oh, thank you.
That's fantastic. And I love how it sounds like you're going to be going to a cozy mystery, because I mean, your book, What's Not Said, it has some humor and some mystery too, right? So maybe you're kind of plucking pieces of what you've got in you for different stories and combine them together. I find that interesting. That's so great. That'll be fun to see what you do with that next.
Yeah.
So I had a question also about, it sounds like you keep very busy after being retired. So you're also a reviewer with
Yes.
LinkedIn. So I was wondering, like, a little bit about that, and does that also affect how you write, reviewing so many books?
So let's pull that question apart. So
Okay.
what was the first part of it?
Sorry about that. I did throw too much at once. So
Yeah.
just kind of a little bit more about that side of your schedule.
What I do. Okay.
Yeah.
So I also belong to 4 book clubs. So I'm reading 4 books a month for the book club. And then I'm trying when I can to do 1 for book trib. And I did 6 books in 2020, 6 in 2019, and I've done 2 so far this year. And it really, so Book Trib is my publicist as well. And what's great about Book Trib is, first of all, they're in Connecticut where I am. But as I was planning to launch What's Not Said, and I met with them, I was like, so what can I do? I mean, I didn't have a platform. And I was just, we didn't have the pandemic yet. That was the year before, but it was like, I just don't know where to start. And so they suggested I become one of their contributing reviewers. And so I have done that, and now I'm a continuing, ongoing reviewer. And they give me, I don't select the books I review for them. They choose for me. And I've been introduced to authors that I probably wouldn't normally, take off the shelf if I was able to go into the bookstore. And I think, combine, when you think about it, that the course that I took and everything that I learned about writing a novel, and then writing the novel, and then reading for review purposes, you do kind of start picking out, what is the inciting incident? What happens in the middle? Did the author give us something substantial in the middle, or is it just filler? And how do they bring it to the close? And is it a satisfying close to me or not? And I also look at how they describe settings, because for me, my weakest link, or my weakest writing attribute, is settings. It's like, oh, it's in Boston. You should know what Boston's like. But some authors, almost start every chapter with the setting, and they describe the setting perfectly, and I tend not to. And so I'm really working on that. But what I really like writing, and so I learn from other authors, is character development and dialogue. That's my sweet spot, I think. Only the readers can can vote on that, right?
Right. But it's kind
Yeah.
of where your realm is with it, like how you
Right.
feel about it.
Right.
I find that interesting what you brought up about setting too. Because I do find that some authors, I feel like if you've been somewhere, it's easier to write about it, or it's harder because you've seen what you've seen there. And you're very well traveled, right? You've been on a tour.
I wouldn't say I'm well traveled. I have friends and Facebook friends and everything that travel much more than me, or ever. But I have been to Italy twice, and the Mediterranean, and a lot of Mexico, Paris,
That's amazing.
London. So I've traveled somewhat, not as much as I would have liked in my life, but the last time I was in Venice, in the Mediterranean, the years, we're all having trouble with identifying years nowadays, but
Yeah.
it was 2019, and I went over there for a cruise and started and ended in Venice. And from the cruise ship on the bus to the airport, I cried because I thought, I don't know if I'll ever be able to come back here again, you
No.
know, and it was, it is my city. So, and then the pandemic hit, and it hit Italy so bad initially, that it was very heartbreaking for me. And of course, the whole pandemic is heartbreaking, but yeah. So.
Did you consider maybe when you were thinking about placing your story in Boston, did you consider any of those places you've gone to kind of bring yourself back there in your mind? Or what made you go with Boston?
Well, I lived in Connecticut most of my life. And then after my divorce in 2002, I moved to Boston, and I thought that's where I was going to live forever. And then I changed jobs and moved out to Seattle in 2006. So I absolutely love Boston. And even though I only lived there for 4 years, I had clients in Boston. So I was in Boston a lot for a number of years before that. And kind of like Venice, when I go to Boston, to me, that's home, even though it's not my home. Connecticut is my home. And so I do have a very important scene in What's Not Said in Venice. I do mention Seattle, kind of a nod to my time there and my friends there. So
That's fantastic. I love that
yeah.
you kind of have that with you forever now too, and it's
Right.
something tangible that you've added
Yeah.
in to
Yeah.
have in your book.
Yeah.
And you have mentioned the pandemic a lot. So already, like, launching a book in the first place is a lot. It's hard. There's a lot that goes into it. So what was that like for you launching during a pandemic with your book?
Not fun. So all of us that launched last year and even into this year, I mean, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants. And it was harder for those that launched in the spring, because that was, right when it hit. At least mine was the fall. So I was able to learn from what other authors had done. But, I didn't know any better because it was my first book. But those authors who had been, repeat authors with repeat launches, they really felt the brunt of not being able to be out with bookstores and community centers and libraries. But I didn't know any better. So I kind of went along with the crowd onto digital and online. And it's where we exist now. And I belong to a couple of like the Authors Guild and the IBPA, where they have been wonderful in kind of guiding us through this time and opening up avenues for us and teaching us how to use different aspects of the online platform. And, the hope has been that, come this fall, that things are going to return to normal, whatever that is. And maybe some of it will, but I'm also learning that some of it won't. And even today not being today, but today, whereas when authors are launching and they're pairing up with their local bookstores, even the bookstores are a little hesitant now to even do those Zoom launches, because what they have learned is that, yes, an author might have a launch that has 40, 50 people online, but then those viewers then go buy their books elsewhere. So the bookstore isn't necessarily
They need you to be in person, so you're
right.
on the
Right.
way
So
out.
you're signing
Yeah,
and then you're buying more than one book.
that
So
makes
I think that there's going to be kind of a resettling of things over the next year or two, how books are launched. I've learned a couple of things just recently about kind of the something that has emerged because of the pandemic, and that is that there is kind of a new genre, if you will. And I just heard about this last week, and I think I'm going to adopt it as part of me. It's called uplit, UPLIT.
Oh, I haven't heard of
uplit.
it.
Okay, so here, da-da, drum roll. So, and I was struggling with this last year as I'm writing the third in the series, because it, from a timeline perspective, it was bumping right up to the pandemic. And so, and I've seen authors talk about this online, that if you're what do you do if you're writing in the time of the pandemic? You know, will people want to read about that, about the pandemic? In fact, I saw Stephen King talking about that, and he was saying he had, I think it was either Stephen King or John Grisham, I think it was Stephen King, that he had a book that was going to be, of all people, right in the time of the pandemic. And what he's done is he's backed it up a year so that it wasn't. But I might not be able to do that. But uplit is kind of the reaction of readers to wanting books that lift them up. Okay, so the up literature, uplit. And even though What's Not Said deals with a serious topic, you know, infidelity, deception, emotional abuse, illness, I've hopefully written it in a way that is enjoyable, entertaining, laugh out loud. And that's what I've been hearing from my readers. And it's really funny, because when I read it, or the sequel, as I'm doing now, reading the advanced reader copy, I laugh, and I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if it's an inside joke that I'm laughing at, or if readers are laughing too. But I think it's what I'm hearing is that you know, people enjoy it, and it is uplifting. So uplit.
You have some fantastic reviews that I've seen.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's great. What do you think is one of like the best things that you've seen from your readers?
I think for me, one of the early comments I had gotten that made me feel more secure was that some people said that the book was well written. And for being a copywriter for 30 years, to have someone say that my novel was well written really meant a lot to me. And several people said that they were surprised that it was my first novel, that my writing seemed, and my plot structure and everything made them think that I had been writing for a long time. So that course must have paid off. I like that people call it zany, sassy, saucy, witty, wickedly fun, perfect for book clubs.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree.
And one reviewer this year already said it was one of her most favorite books so far this year.
Yeah.
And then a couple of people have, and I'll paraphrase it, they said that it touched their soul. And I think that's because, not that it's a heavy book in any way, but I think because it appeals to women, mature women, and I don't necessarily mean in age, I mean in life, okay, that it's not a YA novel at all. And it's, for people who, I think when they read it, they see in different aspects, not in all aspects certainly, but they see something in their own life, they can relate to it.
Which is really important in a book, I think. If you can
Right.
find something you relate to, all of a sudden it just feels more real. It
Right.
does have
Right.
a big difference.
Yeah.
And with all of those wonderful reviews and comments coming in, did you have anything surprising that you've heard yet?
Yeah. So this kind of blew me away because I didn't think about it when I wrote the book, but people said that, mostly all of my characters are flawed. Cassie is flawed, Mike is flawed. I don't know if Chris is flawed. Her best friend Annie is probably the only one that's not flawed. And so everybody likes Annie. And some people don't like that. They don't like having flawed characters. And others love it. So it's something that I think is debatable. And so the whole notion of whether Cassie, who is flawed, she has some good points and some bad points. I gave her my good points and my bad points. But by the end of the book, has she redeemed herself? Right, is always the question. Has she gone on a journey and come out better at the other end? What's interesting about those types of comments to me is that when I wrote What's Not Said, it was the one book I was going to write. And then I had people reading it and they said, so what comes next? They wanted to know what happens with Cassie. And I was like, okay. So that's why I continued it, because I was asked to do so. If I don't know, I mean, talking with you right now, I hadn't really thought about this, but had I known from the beginning that I was going to write a series, would I have done anything different with the first book? I don't know. I'll have to give that some good thinking time.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear, maybe in the follow-up interview, you can tell me what you thought about that.
I'll think about that.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that there is a debate that could happen with if they like them being flawed or not, because I'm definitely on the side. I like flawed characters. It makes it feel more real, and you get to maybe
Aren't we all
grow,
flawed?
right? Yeah. If it's too perfect, it feels maybe too polished to me sometimes. Like, well, okay, maybe this wouldn't happen, but I can kind of get into it, But I love when they're flawed. And I did actually see, I forget the exact wording, but there was a comment about, continuing the journey with these flawed characters that will frustrate you, but you also love them and care about them. So how did you, when you were writing that with the flaws, but also trying to make likable characters, was that a hard balance for you?
So you're not the first person that's asked me that. Okay. And before I decided to go with She Writes Press and I was pitching the book to agents, I did a conference, writers conference up in Boston, of all places, and sat across from an agent who had read the first couple of chapters before the conference. And she said a couple of things to me. One was, if Cassie was so strong and so perfect, then she would have dumped this guy a long time ago, right? And I disagreed with her. But the other was that I needed to give Mike some positive attributes because he is such a flawed character. And so, and to bring him in a little bit more in the first chapter. And so I kind of reworked the first chapter. And I think that the second book, people will see more positivity in some of the characters. But I think there are aspects of Cassie that are likable, and then there are things, where people say, well, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done what she did in different ways. And I won't do spoilers here, but I think it comes when I write. I really involve my characters. I get into my characters, and in fact, I'm looking up at my refrigerator, and I have a magnet that says "What if?" And so I'm constantly asking the characters, well, what if you did this? What if you said that? What if the reaction from so and so was thus? And so in doing that, I think. And I don't always go with the first answer to that question. You're able to choose whether it's going to be a good reaction and a positive attribute of that character, or not. And that's why I think you hear authors say, "Well, I had one ending, but I changed it," because they're trying to figure out, is the guy going to win the girl, or the girl going to win the guy, or not? So it was something that I had to learn. So that's one of those writers learning tools.
Right. That's awesome. I really love that kind of behind the scenes of how you could sit there and question with your characters. So when you're doing that, writing an emotionally abusive husband character, was that really hard to kind of play with the what ifs? Because obviously you made him too flawed, and I can't blame you at first. You were saying
Yeah.
how do you redeem, that
Right,
quality that you've got in mind? So is that hard to go back and forth and write him?
It was, the abusive part was not hard, because I have witnessed that firsthand throughout my life. And so so in some ways it was harder to give him some positive attributes. And there's also, I don't know how far you've gotten, but there is a section about physical abuse. And I touched on it at a very high level and did not drill down into it specifically, because you don't know who your reader is, and you don't know. I want to touch people's soul. I don't want to freak them out.
Yeah.
And I don't want, so that this was another word that I've learned over the last couple of years, trigger some really bad reactions from people. And so that was an area of abuse that I tiptoed around. But the emotional abuse, it's funny because as a new author, I did not approach my book. Like I said, I knew the ending and my characters got me there, but I didn't set out saying, I'm going to write a book about emotional abuse. That was not where I was going. It was more of almost like a love story. So after I wrote the book and I, read it multiple times, and people are saying, well, what is the theme of your book? It's like, a theme? I didn't write for a theme. But the theme of emotional abuse did jump out at me. And so perhaps it was a bit cathartic, and I didn't even realize it. So I was thinking, what is the theme for book 2? What's not true? Again, I didn't write with a theme in mind, but I think the theme will be forgiveness. And there's a lot of different levels of forgiveness. And I think that's what that theme is. I don't know about the third book yet.
I love the themes that have come out of what you've written, because I know, like, you know, some people, if you don't push it too far, it can actually be helpful for people. Like maybe if they need to feel like, oh, I'm not alone in a situation, or someone, you know, is strong and overcome something. So it sounds like you've got this fantastic line in there where people of all different backgrounds can, you know, get some kind of comfort and fun out of it too. I love that. I'm excited to read all that. And actually, talking about your main character, Cassie, I do this thing where I love to look up their name meanings of a main character in a book. So I'm not sure if this is something, if you research name meaning and picked that way, or with coming up with their name, but in Greek, it means the guideless one. And in Latin,
what? It means what?
Like the guideless one. So,
guideless.
yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
found
write
that
down.
interesting. Guideless.
Yeah.
And then in
Yeah.
Latin, it means empty and vain. I feel so bad because Cassie is such a beautiful name and this meaning behind it.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you feel like poor Cassie is guideless? Poor Cassie.
No, I don't. No. Well, I think she needs some guidance.
Yes.
Maybe, yes. Yeah, so the naming was really kind of an interesting thing, because when my early drafts, the main characters were Kate and Jack, and always Chris was always the third in the triangle. But as I was learning about writing the novel, I discovered that apparently there are a lot of novels where the main characters are Kate and Jack. And so I was like, oh dear, I don't want to be like every other novel. So I knew that, you know, there's this Italian-Irish combination in the book. And so I needed for something within the book, I needed Cassie to have a K in her name. And so I did some research on Irish names, and not originally, so Cassandra is an Irish name, but it begins with a C. And so I thought, oh, I could change it to a K. And so that's how she was born. And Michael is the Italian, and you know, I think growing up I just knew some guys named Michael who were Italian. So that was the story. But and Annie is the character Annie, who everyone loves, is a composite of my dearest friends in my life, who, as they read the book, can see, you know, themselves here or there, right? Which is a lot of fun. And I've had a friend for almost 50 years, whose name is Annie, and so that was my nod to her.
I love that combination of showing, you know, love for friends and in a book. I love it.
And my cat. The cat, I don't know if you've gotten to the cat
I have
yet.
not.
Okay, so the cat is named after the cat who I had, who died a few years ago. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I guess that's really cool, the way you've got like another tangible thing. Like you've
right.
always got that memory with you, you know, behind
right.
you.
Yeah.
That is very sweet. I think that's a really great way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to ask too, while we're talking about characters, do you kind of picture celebrities? Like if your book was going to turn into a movie, who would play these characters? Who do you see?
Oh, you're going to love this.
Oh,
I've been asked that as well. So I do, when I'm writing, I have pictures of, they're not necessarily celebrities, but they are pictures of, you know, like someone who I think is Cassie, Annie, you know, Chris and Mike, you know, up on the wall, because it just helps me like I say, setting and descriptions are not my forte. So you wonder why I write, you know.
Oh,
So
I think all writers see visuals differently, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as celebrities go, I would say that Chris, and I have different people assign a celebrity to describe him, and they're all different. They're like, um, now I like George Clooney, um, uh, Bradley Cooper, you know, any of the Chris, you know, they all have the Chris, you know, all those Marvel characters, right? And so I say, okay, Bradley Cooper is going to be Chris. Pierce Brosnan, I think of for Mike. And then, of course, it's got to be Lady Gaga for Cassie, you know, and
With Bradley Cooper.
right. And you know, I don't think Lady Gaga is guideless or empty and vain, but I think that she's got a personality, and I think she's got a vulnerability about her, right? I mean, she's strong, but she's also vulnerable. And I think that's what Cassie is. She's, on one hand, she's strong-willed, and then on another, you know, she's flawed and vulnerable. And so I think it's kind of, I'm sure you didn't expect those three.
No, but I love it. I love it. I think those visuals are going to be with me now too while I read.
Oh dear, I don't know. Create your own. Yeah.
That's a good idea too. So I wanted to ask you, I saw that you love some really cool hobbies. You do Tai Chi, and you call yourself, I love it, an expert sports spectator.
Oh dear, here we go.
Oh no, I won't make it bad.
No.
I love it though. Like, is this something we're going to be seeing in your book as well? Like some nods to your interest?
Yes. Both books, actually. Growing up, he ended up being my first husband. He was a baseball player and a football player, and I in high school I was the editor of our newspaper, and I was the sports editor because then I got to follow the teams all around, right? So I really kind of learned to love baseball and football, and then I was one of these people that would even in my 20s, I would listen to basketball games, the Knicks, on the radio. And then when I lived in Boston for a time, I lived right across the street from Fenway Park, which was absolutely, from my window, I could look right. I could see the home runs being hit out of the park. So,
whoa.
I was right there.
That's great.
So I learned about some of the sports, and I'm one of these people that also love to watch golf. Who does that, right?
I like tennis if it makes you feel any better. I think they're considered the same for watching.
So it's something that when I was working in Seattle, and fantasy football and everything, became popular, and March Madness, and I'd always be part of the little pools that we'd have, and I really enjoyed that. A lot of the guys would come over to me and say, well, what, Tom Brady, rah, 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 rah. And I'm like, oh, Tom Brady, so it was just a lot of fun, so, and I did learn to love the Seattle sports teams as well. So
yeah, with both of those kinds of teams, like both sports.
Yeah.
Like I know I went to college in Massachusetts, so I started kind of getting interested in the Red Sox there.
Yeah.
And I actually noticed that I wore a Red Sox hoodie once when I was coming back to New York.
Oh dear.
Someone spit in my food they were making me because I was wearing the hoodie. So I wanted to ask you, do you get any strong reactions from readers? Because when there are some people who are so into sports that it changes everything for them. Have you gotten anyone saying anything about
Not
that part?
yet.
No?
Not yet. I thought you were going to say from my family, because my family, yeah, they're not all Red Sox fans. So,
Family can be the hardest.
yeah. But now that you mention it, I bet somebody will. It's that coincidence thing again,
Yeah, sometimes I feel like people have very strong reactions. Like my husband he loves Green Bay Packers for football.
Oh,
And he kept threatening to kick me out of the house because I decided I liked the Broncos when Manning was
oh,
on the team.
oh,
So there can be strong, I know.
yeah.
But it's fun. I like to watch them for fun. Like I don't get to the point where I'm too worked up about it, but I know sometimes people can. So I was interested.
Yeah.
And then, aside from your wonderful hobbies, is there anything else other than your writing career too that keeps you busy? Because you already have a very full schedule.
I do. Well, very briefly, you started this wonderful book club, and a year ago, I teamed up with two other authors, and we launched a Facebook site. I don't know if you've heard of it, Prose and the Pandemic. I should invite you to join, as a matter of fact.
My research of you, I did not see that, so I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
And we're not a book club like you are, but it's a place. We have over 1,000 members already, and we bring together readers and authors. And we do book reviews, and we let the authors promote their books. We do a poll, all kinds of crazy things on Wednesdays. So we try to keep it lighthearted, but centered on readers and writers. So that's one thing that has kept me busy. And then, so I was really impressed with your daughter, but I have an 8-year-old granddaughter. And for last year, when the school shut down, she started coming here and doing her remote learning here. And then in the fall, whereas her school opened, her mom and dad decided not to have her go in. So for up until March, we had been doing the remote learning. So in March, they decided that because I was almost going to be vaccinated, dually vaccinated in March, that they sent her back into the classroom. So and in February, they kept her home away from me because she had been exposed, but she was fine. And so anyway, she was saying to them, "Why do you have me in a cage?" So she's not in a cage anymore, but I pick her up from school every afternoon and still spend a lot of time with her. So she is thrilled because her name is at the beginning of the book, and a minor character also has her name, Cecilia. So
I love
again, testimony to friends and family. So
yes, and thank you for letting us know about that other page that we can check out. I'll have to add that to your links I don't think I did have that in there, right?
What other page?
For your page that you're working on, that you said on Wednesdays. What was it called again?
On the Facebook page, Prose and the Pandemic.
Prose and the Pandemic.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Yeah,
I will add that to your links if I didn't already have that in there. Okay. I'm excited to see about that. Yeah, and thank you again for complimenting this book club. This has really been just so amazing. It's so great to meet everybody, and the reading and writing community is just fantastic. Like I love that we get to do all these experiences together, and the authors and the readers I've gotten to meet, I'm just blown away. So I appreciate that. And also with things that you do, I wanted to say I love your website. There are some pages on
Oh,
there that I've never seen before. So like one for welcome librarians,
yeah,
and you show the things you're reading.
yeah,
And I even love your tab that goes along with your book, What I'm Saying.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love the work that you put into that.
Yeah,
And I
it's a
also,
work in progress.
it
I'm
is.
still, yeah, it's a work in progress.
Well, I love it so far. It's
Thank you.
fantastic. It's unlike one I've ever seen. It's such a great setup for everybody coming to your page. It's all
Thank
there
you.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Um, and I did notice you have your books in about 45 libraries, which is fantastic. I'm a
yes,
big fan of
yes.
libraries myself. I'm a storytime educator at one. Um,
Wow.
so I would love, because I don't see the other side of it. And I know there are authors and readers who would love to know what the process is to get a book into a library that's not already
Oh,
on the shelf.
I wish I knew. Well, the first is for people to ask their library for the book. So if there's a book that I want and I don't necessarily want to buy it, I just have to, and a lot of it you can do right online now, is to go into your library's website and request the book. And generally, if a book is requested, the library will buy it. So that's the number one way. The second is that as authors, we have the ability to write to libraries and ask them to, buy our books. And then there's several different publications that the librarians and bookstores get that have all the new releases with the descriptions and everything, and so that they choose from that. And libraries for What's Not Said, they can order them through Ingram Publishing Services or through Baker and Taylor. And a lot of the libraries now too, especially with the pandemic, here we go full circle,
Yeah.
have really gotten into eBooks. And so there's a couple of different, Overdrive and Hoopla. There are different sites, I guess, that the libraries are affiliated with. And so even though I believe my print book is in about 45 or more libraries right now, it's in even more through the ebook
Oh, that's
system.
great.
Yeah, so it is a distribution channel that authors would love to be able to crack in a better way than we've been able to. So
I think there is kind of, each library has their own way of doing things too, but
that's right.
I appreciate you sharing that information too, because I don't think everybody knows that it could be that simple, that you could walk in and be like, hey, I want to read this book. Can you get it for me? Like, I don't know if people would think of that process
Yeah.
being possible too. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing your experiences
Yeah.
with that. And I wanted to come back to the back of your book. You have this amazing Spotify list, and
Oh,
you also have
yeah.
the book club discussion guide,
Right.
which is perfect for book clubs, for our book club. I wanted to know, like, what was your process for coming up with the questions that you included for us to think about?
Can I look at them?
Oh, yes, of course.
So after the book was written, I think what I did was, I think of the different characters and the interpersonal relationships. Okay. And so in fact, the first question has to do with the expiration date, which is, a term that I use. And so that I try to, there's questions about the interpersonal relationships, about the different characters, perhaps by themselves. But and I'm just looking through here. So there's a lot about the relationships, because I think that, if you're in a book club discussion, roundtable discussion of some kind, those are the things that are going to get people talking. right? So they're not necessarily yes and no questions. It's questions where people can either bring in their own experiences, or even sometimes in the book clubs that I've been in, somebody will say, well, remember when we read so and so, such and such a book, and that had that kind of theme, and how they handled that. So it's just things to get people talking. Okay, and there's 15 questions. So, and the Spotify list, the reason I did that and put it in the book was because while I was working on the publication, the printing, of the layout and everything, an author friend I know had put up a playlist after her book was published. And I thought, I control what's in my book to the most part. I can put my playlist in the book. So that's what I did. And I got it for What's Not True as well. And so because I didn't know that I was going to do that when I was writing, I literally sat down, and there are some, I think, songs referred to in the book. And so they're natural, and I know, and What's Not True, that was easier because I knew I was going to do it to begin with. But I have some of my own favorite songs, and so some of them made it in, even if maybe they're not necessarily 100% tied. But like The Sound of Silence from Simon and Garfunkel, is I mean, after people read it, they'll understand that. Where Did Our Love Go? That's kind of like a divorce type of thing. Run Around Sue, I mean, that's Cassie. And I mean, Run Around Sue was one of my favorite songs growing up, so it's in the book. But what people have said is that they, in the reviews, I think too, people have referred to the playlist and said, go to the playlist and listen to it while you're reading the book.
Oh, okay.
Because it does, carry it along. So I hope people enjoy it. So.
I think that's fantastic. That's actually not something I've seen in a book before, and I love that extra headspace with it. That you can carry that on even after. So every time you hear one of these songs after the experience, you can kind of think back when Cassie did that. That's
right.
I think it's fantastic.
And I think that there's, not for every character, but there's certainly songs relevant to Cassie and to Mike and to Chris. So the three main characters.
I love that.
And their
I
relationship.
feel like that can kind of impact people differently too. Like each song might end up meaning something different about a part of a book to the reader too.
Right.
I find interesting.
Yeah.
So I've got one last question for you.
Okay.
Chapter 1, I love that it's titled To or Not to I feel like you have this own art within itself to name the chapter. There's a little bit of humor. I feel like we've been kind of seeing a little bit of character development already before we start reading.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like there's a lot in that. So was it easy for you to do that part where you're naming the chapter?
No. It actually was one of my favorite parts of writing. And I think it goes back to the fact that all of my corporate writing, I was always, I did a lot of advertising and, always coming up with that headline, right? And so when I was writing, drafting the manuscript, it's chapter 1, chapter 2, blah, blah, blah. And then somewhere along the line, I got the idea that I really wanted to title the chapters. And you talk about doing the book reviewing, is that I notice whether novels have chapter titles or not. And it's kind of 50-50, but I thought, that will add, like I said, there's a lot of seriousness in the book, but I think the chapter titles also help to uplit it. All comes around here. So sometimes I think I would name the chapter after I wrote it. And, if there's, I don't know, 40 chapters, maybe I went back and changed 2 of them after the draft was, because I really like them. And again, readers have said that they enjoy the chapter titles because they themselves say, oh, what is this going to be about? It's like a roadmap through the book. And then after they read the chapter, even though the chapter titles are at the top of each page, they go back and they check the chapter title and see how it connects. And some, I think, connect easier than others, but I didn't spend enormous amount of time agonizing over what the chapter title was going to be. Most of it was organic, and it came to me after I wrote the chapter. So
I love it, especially just looking at that first one. I'm like, oh, we are in for some fun. Like, it just she's got a decision she's going on. Like, I feel like it's this amazing.
I never changed that one. I never changed that one. So.
I love it, and I'm so excited to read it. And I think you mentioned it there about reviews too. I'll say it again now. I like to say it all month long. I'll say it again at the end. Review, especially winners. Please make sure your copies, when you're done reading, review. Very important. Amazon. What are some other good places that are good for your reviews?
Goodreads.
Goodreads.
And so 2 things on Goodreads. One, of course, is the review. But even now, they can go in and check that they're either reading the book or want to read the book. And also the same thing for What's Not True. If they're in Goodreads, they should go over to What's Not True and hopefully mark it that they want to read it, because that just kind of helps generate enthusiasm.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because I know you can add to, I think they call it like the TBR list, right? To be read list. So that's good to know that also helps when you're reading that and checking on that.
So it's, Amazon, Goodreads, BookBub. Those are the 3 main.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to read your book this month, and this has been fantastic.
Oh,
thank you so much,
you.
Valerie.
This is super, Heather. You're fabulous.
Oh, so are you. This is great. All right, so it is time for this exciting giveaway. Valerie, thank you so much for offering this. So you're gonna give away a signed copy of What's Not Said, and also an ebook copy.
To 2 people.
Yep, to 2 members who are subscribers to our corresponding book club YouTube channel. Yes. So I'm gonna mix these names up. We've got lots of entries. All right, so the first one you pick, what do you think? Should be the signed copy?
Sure.
All right, so let's see who gets the signed copy. All right, so we've got Bonnie Yepson Weinman. Yay, congratulations.
Great. Congratulations, Bonnie.
And I'm always so scared to mispronounce names, so let me know if I mispronounced your name, and I will apologize and never do that again. So hopefully I said that correctly. All right, mix up. And then we've got an ebook copy that Valerie's going to give away. All right, let's see what you've got. Becky Merkiel. Congratulations, Becky.
Wow. Isn't that unusual that both of those names begin with a...
What letter?
B. That's right. I love coincidences.
That is a coincidence.
Yeah,
I did not pick up on that until you said it.
There's another coincidence with the names. A, B, like the alphabet.
The alphabet,
That's right.
That's such a coincidence.
It
is a coincidence. I love it. Thank you for choosing Bonnie and Becky.
Thank you for your help. And after this is posted, I'll go ahead and contact those winners and get the information you need and send it along to you so they can get the book.
Terrific.
Yes, that's perfect. And then everybody else who entered, thank you so much. And as long as you're subscribed to my channel, you'll be able to keep entering into some future giveaways. So I
Terrific.
appreciate it. And thank you everybody for entering.
And I think the end of the month, we're going to do another giveaway. So
Yes, I'm very excited about that.
yeah,
Did you want to
yeah.
talk about it now, or should we talk
Nope.
about it later on?
We'll
Yeah.
talk about it another time.
Yes, so
Perhaps.
another exciting giveaway.
We have like 4 weeks. So
Valerie, you're so fantastic. Thank you for offering these.